Hi, I'm Dr. Donald DeFabio, and there aren't any dragons here, but we are going to be talking about There Be Dragons, a very interesting film that has just come out, and all specifically about St Josemaria Escriva, the founder of Opus Dei. With me now is John Coverdale. John, thank you very much for your time today.
Pleasure to be here.
Now,
nice being in the studio.
Yeah, isn't it nice? Yeah, thank you. It's a little out of the way, but we're glad you made the time to get here today.
Well, my pleasure.
There Be Dragons.
There Be Dragons.
Interesting film, isn't it?
It is, yes. It's a very interesting film from many perspectives. From my perspective as a member of Opus Dei, I'm particularly interested in the depiction of St Josemaria, the founder of Opus Dei, whom I happen to know quite well for quite a few years. But in general, it's an interesting film about the Civil War and about the whole topic of forgiveness and all that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Now, the movie itself has St. Josemaria in it. It's also about the Spanish Civil War.
Yes.
And beyond that, how accurate is it to historical perspectives?
Well, I'd say it's pretty accurate. There's certainly the things about St. Josemaria all have a pretty clear foundation in things that actually happened in his life. Now, of course, they're transformed to make them into a film, and the setting maybe isn't where it actually occurred or whatever, but the events are really pretty historical.
Now, how long did you spend with St. Josemaria when he was in Rome, I believe,
About
correct?
8 years. Yeah.
8 years.
Yeah.
What was that like?
It was wonderful. I worked fairly closely with him, and I worked in an office that basically did public relations for Opus Dei, and saw him almost every day, and he was just a wonderful person to work with.
How would you describe the experiences from the Spanish Civil War from his perspective? I know you wrote a book about it, but...
Well, from his perspective, it was awful, basically. During the Spanish Civil War, there was a very brutal persecution of the church, and about 7,000 priests and nuns were killed during the war. He had to go into hiding. At first, he was literally kind of on the run in Madrid from place to place, and then for a while he found refuge in an insane asylum, which is depicted in the film. And then later he found refuge in a consulate, there, the consulate of Honduras. And after a while, the war kept dragging on. He said, I can't just stay here, shut up in this house, not being able to do any priestly work, not able to be doing anything. And so eventually he learned that you could, with a lot of luck, get up to Barcelona, and then from Barcelona be led by people who during peacetime were largely smugglers, be led through the mountains, through the Pyrenees Mountains, and cross into Andorra, from there into France, then go across the south of France and come back into the part of Spain where the church wasn't persecuted.
Got it.
He did that, but it was a terrible experience.
Yeah. Physically, emotionally, spiritually draining, I would assume, all three.
Always. It was pretty awful, yes.
Now, when you were with him in Rome, I'm sure he was a very holy man and, very special to be around. But did you get a sense or a feeling that he may have that saintly quality, or did it come across in any way while he was alive?
Well, you see, I don't think I know what that saintly quality is.
Does anybody know?
So, did he come across as a man who was extraordinarily close to God, and in that sense, holy and saintly? Yes, he certainly did. Did I think of him as kind of a saint? Well, probably not, because even though, we know that saints are ordinary people who are especially close to God, who really love God, but we do tend to think of saints as kind of plaster statues, distant, and he was a very warm, vibrant, loving human being, and so I think the word saint didn't particularly occur to me, but the reality was clear.
Now, one of the terms they use in Opus Dei, I believe, is the work. What is a day in the work like?
Well, it depends enormously. For each individual, I'd say it's different, right? Because Opus Dei is made up of men and women, single and married, young and old, healthy and sick, people with lots of education and people with very little education, people with big families and people who are single. So I don't think you can say a day in Opus Dei is like this. What it is people who are trying to take their life, whatever that is, and make it a service to God, a service to other people, a way of coming closer to God, a way of being a prayerful, contemplative soul in the midst of the world. But that's obviously very different for someone like me who's a law professor and someone, say, who's a bricklayer. I mean, what we do during the day is going to be very different.
Mm-hmm. So it's all about bringing that everyday holiness and sanctity to our tasks from morning to night.
That's right. That's exactly what it's about. That was his message.
That was his message.
His message was, I'd say, twofold. It was one, that God calls everyone to sanctity, to holiness, right? And that Christ, when he says in the gospel, "Be ye perfect as your heavenly Father is perfect," wasn't talking to a group of nuns. He was talking to fishermen and farmers and housewives, all sorts of people. And secondly, that for most people, that will mean trying to come close to God in the circumstances of their daily life, that a few people are called to be priests or to be nuns or monks or whatever, and that's a great calling and a wonderful gift from God, but it's not for most people. So if most people are called to sanctity, it must be in their work, and that was, I think his message was the sanctification of daily life. Pope John Paul, when he canonized him in the homily that he gave, referred to him as the saint of ordinary life.
Interesting. So if you had to sum up in a brief sentence, what is Opus Dei? Can that be done, and could you do it for us?
Well, I don't know whether a brief sentence, but two or three.
Oh, you have them. Go ahead.
Okay, so,
yeah, you can have four.
So Opus Dei is a message, and that message is that God calls everyone to sanctity, and most people to sanctity in their daily work. And it's a group of people who commit themselves to A, trying to put that message into practice in their own life, and B, spreading it to others.
And if people wanted more information about Opus Dei, where
well,
can they find that?
we have a very good website, www.opusdei.org.
And one final thought about St. Josemaria that you could share with us?
I think of a man who had enormous affection for people, a man who, he sometimes described himself, a man who knew how to love.
Well, John Coverdale, thank you very much.
Pleasure
Appreciate your time. And yeah, check it out. There Be Dragons, as well as opusdei.org. I'm Dr. Donald DeFabio.